One of the things that's so critical when things like this happens is the legal perspective, because sometimes in the details are the most important parts of the story, not the optics, not the politics. And I'll tell you, the politics is this already. Here's a tweet from Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, Republican Minority Leader. He says, Attorney General Garland, preserve your documents and clear your calendar. Quote, I've seen enough, he says. The Department of Justice has reached an intolerable state of weaponized politicization. When Republicans take back the House, we will conduct immediate oversight of this department, follow the facts, and leave no stone unturned. Attorney General Garland, preserve your documents and clear your calendar. Cue the attorneys. I want to bring in Andrew Cherkasky. He's a former federal prosecutor, now in private practice, and he specializes in civil rights law. When you hear those words, preserve your documents, I'm sure that your ears perk up, because that means Kevin McCarthy and perhaps his Republican caucus are thinking about what they can do legally when they say they are going to take over the House. But let's put that aside for a second and just talk about this massive development for a moment, if you will. I never thought I'd see the day. I really didn't, Andrew, where we'd see the former president having the FBI actually search through his home without him there.
This is a seismic day, as you've been saying, because it answers a lot of questions that have been out there. The questions that have been answered by this are a couplefold. Number one, the DOJ is saying that they actually suspect a crime took place. Not just that they suspect a crime took place, but that there would be evidence of that crime at Mar-a-Lago. This isn't some sort of civil effort to recover documents from the former president. They're saying that they actually believe, through the probable cause standard, that a crime took place. And implied in that is the big question: can you prosecute a former president for his acts while in office? Implicit, I think, in the act of actually going forward and having the affidavit, that alleged criminal activity, they are saying in their own minds that they can prosecute the president. Because I don't think a judge would have ever signed off on this if the Department of Justice and the attorneys involved and the FBI agents involved didn't tell the judge specifically that they believe that they can actually prosecute the crime. Otherwise, it's not a crime at all. So I think that the developments here are not just big in the idea that they're raiding a former president's personal residence, violating his Fourth Amendment potentially if they didn't do it through the proper way. What they're saying is that in order to satisfy the requirements under the Fourth Amendment, they really did have to establish that a crime took place in their mind and that there would be evidence of it at Mar-a-Lago.
Okay, so as a result of this Fourth Amendment search, let's talk about the actual code that, is in question here. It's United States Code, it's 18 U.S. Code 2071. That is the Presidential Records Act. It's really, really serious if you remove records, just records, okay? Not even classified records. But if they are classified, it is even more serious. And yes, these are federal crimes. But how serious are these federal crimes if, in fact, these were committed? We're not suggesting that for a minute, but there are a bunch of FBI people going through the former president's house.
Right. So we have a couple of different theories under which this could ultimately be criminal. So you're talking right now about the Presidential Records Act. That, I believe, under circumstances like this, would be a maximum of 3 years in jail. So technically a felony offense, but certainly not something that's particularly serious in the scheme of the United States Criminal Code. Now, there could be other theories of criminal liability here, some sort of violation of classified records, taking a classified record, or the mishandling of a classified record. And there are punishments that could be far in excess of 3 years in connection with the improper handling of classified records. That said, you have to keep in mind President Trump is the ultimate classification authority when he's in office. And it's really the president of the United States at any one time who's the classification authority. So it's a bit odd to be prosecuting or conceptually prosecuting the person who would have been the one to title these documents as classified or as unclassified. And that just kind of goes down a whole path in my mind of whether, even if he did violate this, would it have just been a negligent act? Typically, you can't prosecute someone for negligently taking documents that they had in good faith thought would be appropriate. So really would have had to amount to some degree of criminal recklessness or criminal negligence for him to be prosecuted through the idea that these are simply classified documents. Many questions in terms of exactly what crimes the Department of Justice suspect were violated here. But again, I go back to what I said before. It means the Department of Justice does believe a crime was committed.
Andrew, can I ask you something? You know, there are other ways this could have happened, right? You know, the way I've watched crimes being investigated is usually through subpoena. And that's when you serve someone and say, produce these records. You're being served. And when you don't subpoena someone and instead go this route, there is a reason, and there's a good reason. Can you explain that to the viewers, why this wouldn't have been a subpoena and instead would have been, you know, quote, large number of agents going through the house?
Many different reasons why to not subpoena. I think primarily it's that you're worried you're not going to actually get the documents or the evidence back from that individual, and in so doing, give them the opportunity to actually destroy it. Now, on the other side, and I see this seems very obvious. I mean, this is a long time that has passed. And so these records have been there for an extremely long period of time, over a year at this point. Not just that, but we also have the idea that this has been an ongoing debate with the archives, so the National Archives. So they have asked for certain records back. There's been an ongoing conversation on that point. And so to go from that conversation and the kind of publicity that has gone on for months about that topic to suddenly going in there, that signals to me some idea that somebody believes these records were going to vanish. And why wouldn't they have vanished in the months before this? I don't know what their good faith is for that, but they had to say to them, yeah, go ahead.
One of the other things I think is really important to note, because our viewers know politics and they know when it crosses and intersects with the law. And I think if we're all going to do the math here for a minute, it is August the 8th. If you count 90 days from now, it's the midterm elections. And, you know, the DOJ is very aware of its influence on the public as you get closer to a midterm. Just ask James Comey about his Hillary Clinton comments within, you know, that 90 days. So do you suspect that today this happened because we are just a shade outside of 90 days where the DOJ puts a full lid on anything that might have the patina of politics in their actions?
So I was going to mention Comey and his actions kind of within that window. You have to keep in mind that it's just a policy. And so when the Department of Justice is going forward with something as big as the criminal prosecution of a former president, and that's what I see this as, again, because they had to say to the judge that they suspected a crime. So in doing that, does the 90 days really matter? Perhaps they were trying to stay out of that, gain a little bit of a point from a political aspect of not overly politicizing this. But I think that's way out the window here. I think that the politics of this and the division that's going to come from this is going to be astronomical. Really, what the FBI is doing is signaling once and for all through the Department of Justice that they think President Trump, or at least those closely connected with him, violated the criminal code of the United States, and that they are interested in prosecuting him for that.
You have good information. It's why you pass the bar and you do what you do. Andrew, thank you. Andrew Cherkasky joining us live on this breaking story right now. I also want to thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.